In this video, I'm going to show how to replace the rear brake calipers on this Toyota Corolla with rear disc brakes. These are located behind your rear wheel. Let's get started. Let's remove the wheel. Use a 21mm socket and remove all 5 lug nuts. If you have the locking nuts, make sure you of course have the locking key for them and break them free with a breaker bar on the ground before you lift up the vehicle. These locking lug nuts keys can break if you use an impact on them. Mine is broken free, so I'm ready to take them all off. Remove the wheel. From the back side of the caliper, we can see where the parking brake cable goes through it. Let's pull straight up on this plastic shield and remove it. This will allow us to pull the parking brake cable out of this lever. I like to do this now while the caliper is mounted because it's a whole lot easier to remove it with it mounted rather than when it's moving around. So let's get some locking pliers right on here. This is how I like to do it, so I can put some pressure on this lever. You need just a little bit of movement out of it, and then pop this cable end right out. Get those locked in, pry out on this, and that is all you need out of it. Get the pliers off. Now we can pull the cable out of this bracket. To get it out of here, there are just 3 little tabs that you have to squeeze in and then pull the cable out. Make sure it's not seized in here. Mine is not. So all I need to do is squeeze these tabs, and it doesn't really matter which one you start with, but what does matter is that you pull on it constantly so that as soon as the tabs break free, you can slide it through. All right, there it is. Make sure this boot didn't get damaged or pop off. If it popped off, just slide it right back on and set the parking brake cable aside. Now I want to take the entire caliper and bracket assembly off as a unit. There's a 14mm bolt up top that you can easily get to now, and another 14mm bolt right here that hold all of this onto the knuckle. With a deep socket or an extension on a shallow socket, you can easily get to this. We'll unthread it. There's one, and the second one, and the caliper and bracket assembly come off. From in here, however, we have to remove the pads so we can reuse them. So just slide them inward. There's one, and there's the second one. Now set the caliper aside where it can't put pressure on the brake hose. You don't want to damage it. On our workbench, let's separate the caliper from the bracket. With a 14mm socket, remove these 2 bolts. We'll set this aside and we'll work on the bracket itself. We have to lubricate these areas where the anti-rattle clips will go, as well as the slider pins. Now right here you need a little bit of silicone paste or brake grease. If you're using silicone paste, make sure it's rated for high temperatures or brakes. Otherwise it will melt as the brakes operate and it'll get all over the place. And then take your anti-rattle clips, line them up, and press them down and onto the caliper bracket. We'll do the same to the other side. Now we have to remove the slider pins. We'll do this one at a time. In this particular application, both of them will have a rubber sleeve here at the end. So because of that, it doesn't matter which one goes where. Typically, only one of the pins has it. Regardless, you want to add some silicone paste that is rated for brakes or some brake grease to the pin. Just a thin layer to help it slide over time. Keep it lubricated. Then what I like to do personally is add some silicone paste to the inside of the boot. And this will basically be a reserve of grease. As the brakes operate over time, it'll keep things nicely lubricated. Work that grease into the folds of the boot, stick the pin in, push it in all the way, and now, optionally but recommended, is taking the boot back off again, however, on the caliper side, so you can add some grease right to that ridge over there. This is where the caliper and the boot seal up together, and some grease will prevent rust from building up. Give this a couple twists to work that grease in. Everything slides smoothly. If there's air trapped behind it and it's pushing the pin out, squeeze the pin, squeeze the boot. That'll get the air out. Wipe off any excess that might be on here. You don't want it to be all over the place because it'll just collect a bunch of debris. Now this bracket is ready for installation. Install the bracket over the knuckle, line it up, and have one bolt ready just to temporarily secure it so you can then line up the second one. We'll get these snugged up. Torque these to 42 foot-pounds. Let's put the pads on. The inner pad had the wear indicator. Slide them in at an angle and then push them in. The outer pad did not have a wear indicator. Take your caliper, slide it over the pads and over the pins, and we'll put the bolts in. We'll snug these up and torque them to 26 foot-pounds. Get the parking brake cable reattached, slide it through this bracket, make sure it clicks in and is locked. Push this lever. There's no pressure on the caliper, so you can push it by hand until you can hook this on. There we go. Let's remove the banjo bolt that is on the new caliper. Make sure you get those two washers as well. From the old caliper with an 11mm socket, remove the banjo bolt and therefore disconnect the hose. We'll let that caliper drain into a bucket. Remove the old banjo bolt as well as any old washers that are here. Now stick the new banjo bolt with one washer onto the hose, then another new copper washer at the bottom. Make sure that hook goes into the slot that's cut out for it on the caliper, and thread this in, tighten it up so it can stop leaking at least, and then we'll torque it. This new banjo bolt is a 12mm in size. Okay, that's snugged up. Torque this to 21 foot-pounds. All right, that's nice and tight. All you need to do is squish these two copper washers and that'll create the seal that you're looking for. Put back this plastic cover that goes over the parking brake cable bracket. Let's use a pocket screwdriver and remove the cap off of the bleeder screw, and a 10mm wrench to break this bleeder screw free. Now we'll just wait for fluid to make its way through. The gravity bleed is basically gravity pulling fluid into the caliper and pushing the air out. Now after this procedure, even though this should take care of most if not all of the air in the system, at least on this corner of the vehicle, you could perform a full manual brake bleed if you think it's necessary, which you'll see how to do at the end of the video. For now, let's just wait for our gravity bleed to be done, and that means no more air bubbles coming out of the bleeder screw and just clean brake fluid. All right, we have a nice steady trickle of fluid here. I'm just going to let it do this for a second. Sometimes spinning the bleeder screw, there we go, it can help get a little bit extra air out. This is done now, so I'm going to close it off. Snug up the bleeder screw. We'll get any brake fluid that dripped off of here. Rinse this with brake parts cleaner. And cap off the bleeder screw with this cover. Put the wheel back on. Start all 5 lug nuts, bottom them out in a cross pattern, and also in a cross pattern, torque them to 76 foot-pounds. Double check them. Pump up the brake pedal, top off the master cylinder, and take it for a road test. The brake master cylinder is located on the driver's side of the engine bay up against the firewall, and Toyota was nice enough to give a little cutout here so you can access it without removing much at all. Grab onto this rubber weather stripping and pull it away on this last hook, and then pull it in the other direction on this next hook. Now there's 2 tabs here that we have to press in and pull up on, and that will release this little plate with the weather stripping. Fold it out of your way, and there's your master cylinder. If there's a lot of debris over here, wipe it off with a rag. Mine's not in too bad of shape here, it's pretty clean, so I'm going to remove the cap. If you read it closely, it'll say to only use .3 or 4 brake fluid, and that's exactly what we'll be using. This master cylinder has brand new brake fluid in it because I just repaired a big leak. So there is no reason for me to extract the brake fluid that I just put in, However, if you have existing brake fluid in here that you didn't just put in, I would remove the old brake fluid with a little straw, and there's typically a vacuum pump that you can use or a fluid transfer pump that is able to get down in here and extract it all, and then of course recycle it properly. As for me, I'll just be topping this off with brand new brake fluid all the way to the full line, which you can read on the side of it. Once you've filled it up, cap it off. Now these vehicles will come with either rear drum brakes or rear disc brakes. We happen to have rear disc brakes, but the sequence is exactly the same. So you start at the right rear wheel, that's the passenger side rear. Then you move over to the left front, that being the driver's side front. Then you top off the master cylinder. Then you move over to the driver's side rear, or the left rear. And then you finish off with the right front, that's the passenger side front. Then top off the master cylinder again, and if you think you need to bleed some more, do it again in the same sequence until no air bubbles come out of any of the bleeder screws. We are now at the right rear wheel. This is our first caliper we're going to bleed, so I'm going to pop the bleeder screw cap off. I have an assistant in the vehicle that's ready to pump up the brake pedal and create pressure. And with a 10mm wrench, I'm going to be ready to open the bleeder screw once there's pressure built in the system. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please.
Holding.
All right, holding pressure, so I'm going to break this free.
Floor.
All right, quite a bit of air came out of there. Snug it up and go again. We're going to pump and bleed until there's no more air bubbles coming out of this bleeder screw.
Holding. Floor.
All right, let's do it one more time. Go again.
Holding. Floor.
I like this. This was nice and clean. I'm going to cap this off. You can let go of the brake pedal now. Clean off anything that may have dripped down. And of course, cap off your bleeder screw. Now we'll move over to the left front wheel. Now our second wheel is going to be the left front caliper. Remove the bleeder screw cap. And same thing, I'm going to put my bleeder hose on the bleeder screw. Have an assistant in the vehicle. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please.
Holding.
All right. By the way, this takes an 8mm socket, no longer a 10.
Floor.
Break that free. Okay, go again.
Holding. Floor.
This one's actually not bad. Let's do it one last time. Go again.
Holding. Floor.
All right, you can let go of the brake pedal. Wipe off any brake fluid that may have dripped. Rinse it with brake parts cleaner if needed, and cap this off. Now let's fill up the master cylinder, remove the cap, fill it up all the way to the max line, cap it back off. And then move over to the left rear caliper and then the front right caliper and do the same that you just saw me do on the other side rear and this side front. Let's fill up the master cylinder one last time. Take the cap off, top it off up to the max line, cap it back off, and put this cap back on here. Make sure this is still hooked in. All right, there we go. Job is done. Put the wheels back on and torque them to 76 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.